When is it going out?
Well, I guess we can begin. It's 9:59, 10 o'clock or so. My name's Matt Baird. I am a founding faculty member here. I was the first history teacher hired. And I also do some work in Egypt with CFI. So that project is now about 2-3 years old. So that involves working in professional development with teachers in Egypt who are at two STEM schools there, which are boarding schools. So my interest in this topic came about last year when I was reading Martin Buber and the idea of connection. And it occurred to me that, and this was covered a lot last night if you were in the audience last night, is that there's a disconnect, I think, between technology and what we want technology to be able to do in the classroom, and at the same time, what's actually good about school that we want to keep. And that difference, that dialectic, is something that I want to explore in EduCon talk. Now, this is a little bit unusual for me. Normally, people aren't paying this much attention to me. And second, I'm not used to standing up and talking. SLA is about creating educational environments. And it was kind of difficult for me to think about, okay, how can we create an educational environment to explore this topic? So I have a couple of exercises and a couple of ideas. So there are really a couple of goals for this workshop. And it's kind of bifurcated. I want to be a little bit critical about the way that we're using technology now, but I also want to provide a platform for people to be able to say, look, we have 30 really smart, technically savvy people in the room that are doing things in their classrooms. I want to be able to share some of that and share some of that knowledge with you so you can connect. And I want to stretch people's comfort zones with technology. If you're a person who's at EduCon and whose district is just getting started in technology, and you're wondering what can I do next week or in the upcoming year, I hope maybe be able to give you some ideas. And also, what do you do on Monday? And that is, you're going to have lots of ideas this weekend. I usually try to limit myself to 3 big ideas during EduCon that I come away with, and usually that happens within the first 2 or 3 sessions. But ultimately, we all have to teach on Monday, or most of us do. And what does that look like? So that's what I'm primarily interested in. I don't know if we're going to get to all this, but I have one essential question, and that is, what can technology do well, and what can technology not do at all? And you heard some very bright people last night talk about this question a lot. And I was listening last night, I said, oh God, well, there goes most of my presentation. So my bias is I'm open to education, but as it was expressed last night much more eloquently, I'm not a fan of Khan Academy as a replacement for education. I think it's terrific for instruction. I think we need to make a distinction between education and instruction. And I think many of the online courses that are being offered to thousands of people, yes, you are providing content, you're providing information, but that's not the same thing as an education. And it's not the same thing as personal contact, which I think makes the difference in people's lives. We could not videotape what happens in an SLA classroom, broadcast it, and make it SLA. And when you talk to students here, one of the things that you're going to find, if you ask them, and you can do this, and I might be wrong, but what do they like about SLA? Technology usually comes about 4th or 5th. Okay. What they appreciate is the people here. They appreciate the atmosphere. They appreciate different elements of school lunch will not come up at all. But they don't automatically say, wow, it's just terrific that we have one laptop computer here. That's not really what is the primary means of how we get people in the building and how we keep people in the building. So that's something to keep in mind. So what I'd like you to do now is let's use technology. Go to msoccerdiv.com. How many people are familiar with Soccerdiv? Okay. So what you do is just take any device on your computer, go to msoccerdiv.com, and you'll see a little place for a room number. This is my room number at msoccerdiv.com. I have to actually log on to that. And I'll show you what is blocked.
Yeah, but you can do it on the app too, right?
It's not if you go to m.soccer.com.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, there's a dot here. I'm sorry about that. Yeah. And go to room 382909. Okay. And what you can do, it's an assessment service basically, and it works in real time. And I use it for exit tickets. I use it for just doing the type of thing that we're doing now. And what I am going to show you in a moment is just what the results are. You can actually just publicize the results to teachers. To student drives. Let's resume the activity, and so that it just works as a public polling. You can actually try to, if you have 30 people in a room, you can actually see that, okay, 20 of them actually went ahead and actually voted. That means that 10 people in here, decided that they didn't want to participate. If you were in a class, that's fine, you're all adults. If you're in a class, I say, well, what is it about the 10 people who didn't want to participate? Oh, here we go. All right, so you'll notice that the division on the topic is actually pretty even, and I would like to hear some. I'd like to hear some discussion about it. More technology in classroom is beneficial for the education of the child. You obviously are qualifying it yourselves, and you're putting your own spin on the question, and it might have a lot to do with where you come from. Whether you come from a technology-rich school, whether you come from one where there's significant deficits in technology, it could be there could be a lot of different reasons for your response. But I'd like to hear a couple. Okay.
I think it is more visual, not because the inanimate object is itself is going to see, but putting the resources.
Okay.
Trying to do so sitting there, but maybe that one avenue, that medium, will speak better to the crowd, a pen, or an exit, or an navigate. I don't know, but
Sure.
it's not really used.
Okay. Good. How many people felt sort of the same or sort of, okay.
I said false.
Okay.
Because I think it's too, there's a lot of other conditions, it's sort of a conditional statement.
Right.
More technology, classroom benefits and education of the child. I think that technology is a magnifier and amplifier.
Mm-hmm.
And so if this is in a situation where, like I always tell my teachers, or principals, if you have a teacher that's bad with classroom management, more technology will make them worse with classroom management.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, that technology is not a benefit So it was not true often enough for me to feel confident that it's true.
Okay. So, anybody else have additional comments based upon what we just heard? I think what you just heard are the two different sort of poles of this entire discussion. And one is, yes, technology opens up avenues. It opens up the potential for people to do tremendous things in education. It also makes the possibility of doing what we already do just more technological. And what we already do may not necessarily be opening the type of educational opportunities for kids that we want. So I think, in a nutshell, we have two different ways to look at it. I have two quotes that I want you to take a look at. Let me pull this back and turn off the gear. Or turn on the wheel. One quote, all real living is meeting. And I think that we separate living and schooling too much. And I think that if we're actually going to make schools better, we actually have to not just live in schools, but do the process of living in schools. And I think we institutionalize schools so much that we actually take living out of it. The second is one of my favorites. Any teacher can be replaced by a computer, probably should be. And I think that is a challenge to us as educators as to what exactly are we doing with this technology. And if we are blending classrooms, if we're just flipping classrooms, then what are we blending them for and what are we flipping them for? Are we just doing what we did efficiently? Do people know what I'm talking about when I say flipping classrooms and blending classrooms? Okay? No? Okay. A blended classroom is when you would be able to put a series of, let's say, lectures or short movies that students would be able to look at away from the classroom, but you would be doing instruction inside of the classroom. It's like flipping a classroom, only it's doing both together. Flipping a classroom totally would mean doing most of the instruction on video outside of the class and doing something inside of class that would be different. Okay? There were lots I went to a conference this summer where there were lots of people who were incredibly excited about flipping classrooms. There are seminars on flip your classroom today, flip your classroom tomorrow, flip your classroom always. I came away a little bit skeptical because of the sort of fervor that people were actually pursuing it, as if flipping the classroom was actually going to make something that's different. And I think that if we want to make something that's different, we have to make it more human. So what I'd like to do now is, if you go to this tiny URL, I'd like to crowdsource some of the things that you are using already. I have 4 things up there which I use. Socrative is up there. I put Evernote up there. Asana. Do people know about Asana? Asana is a really interesting tool for, it's actually a to-do list on steroids. But what you can do is you can actually create tasks in groups and then assign different people tasks in order to be able to do that. The other thing I put up there was Evernote, and there are all sorts of tools which you guys use already. I also put up a site called 60 in 60, which is somebody from the school district here gives a 60-minute presentation of 60 sites that you can use in your classroom. And this is a list of the 60 sites that he does. He changes them every year, every time he does a presentation. So it's a really good running list of some pretty interesting sites, and he just runs them down quickly, and you can explore them for yourselves. If some of you are elementary teachers, there's sites for elementary classrooms there. If some of you are high school teachers, there are sites for high school classrooms there. All sorts of different things that you can take a look at. So I put those 4 down already. I would love to see for the next 5 minutes or so whether we can crowdsource some of the sites that you actually have, and then we can discuss some of that. There's more talking than I have done since last FedCon. We just don't do a lot of talking. People know about tinyURL, right? Okay. All right, tinyURL. Well, if you go to something like Google Doc, Google Doc will have, thank you. Google Doc will have, I don't know, 45, 60 characters in the URL, the site name. And what this does is it's site, you go to tinyURL, and it just says tinyURL, and you can name it what you want. So on the Google Doc that this connects to, I think it said that there were 65 characters and 75 characters. So it's impossible for me to have people simply copy down the URL. Sure. Yeah. People are able to access the URL and add to it. It's fantastic. Yeah, we try. We have our technology coordinator in the room actually, so she can explain about this.
Well, it's School District Philadelphia. It's a really good pipe. And they've made it huge, and it serves every single school in the district. And I think they were very thoughtful when they started it out, how much bandwidth they would actually need. And it's just a really sound system that serves a huge amount of people. So we're lucky. Yep. So you'll see there's a hotspot there, and then there's one over here. And they're just throughout the building. They knew that this school was specifically for one-to-one.
We added hotspots as well after the first year when we realized when we had hundreds of people using it at once that we needed to amplify the signal. So it's taken us a while to get to this.
Lots of people like to complain about what the district has wrong, but this is one of those things that they've done really right, and they've been on the mark for many years. They've been progressive about their thoughtfulness in it, and they've tried really hard to educate teachers in a way that they can take advantage of the tools that are here, but they make it just work. So it's one of the things that I think they're extremely successful at.
Our school is trying hard, but our system is trying hard. Schools are now reached the limit of wire. All the wires are going to be changed.
Yeah. It is. Sorry.
Oh, okay, thank you for putting the URL up. Yeah, people still working on it. Fantastic. One of the things you quickly learn about EduCon is that, as one of the participants was saying last night, it's networked and massively parallel. And one of the things that happens is that there's more knowledge inside this room than simply what I am able to present to you. And being able to leverage that and have that as a tool for people to use is really what EduCon's about. One of the things we say here is that all learning is networked. And it's one of the things when you teach in a one-to-one classroom, one of the things that happens is, well, there are two things. One is that instead of having a one-to-one relationship with 30 students, and that's happening simultaneously, you have students who have relationships with one another. And you have the ability for students to learn not just from teachers and have 1/30th of my attention and 1/30th of my time, but to have the ability to work with each other the way that you are now. It's also radically democratic. It de-emphasizes the role of the teacher as the person who contains the knowledge and who is the person who is expounding that. So one of the things that's wonderful here is that when a student asks me something that I don't know, I can just simply say, well, we all have computers, we can look it up. I'd be interested in knowing that as well. Please research that and let us know what that is. It takes the emphasis of the teacher away from somebody who has to know everything and is the provider of content to a facilitator of an educational environment. I have a couple of questions regarding what we put down. It looks like some people are still working on it, but I think that if we can move forward, that would be great. You have access to this, and thank you for everyone who participated in putting this together. It's called crowdsourcing, by the way. So I'm interested in what these applications can do well, and what you think these tools, the ones that you know, what they do well is, and we shouldn't forget that they do some things incredibly well. And let's try to categorize what those might look like.
Are you asking the ones that we posted?
Yeah, the ones that you posted, or the ones in general. What sort of things do they do well?
I think one of the things I posted, or the thing I posted on there was today was the back channel, which is Twitter's uses that, but so many people don't know about that, or in the classroom, you know, your students might not have that, so it's just one of the easiest ways to create and access the back channel conversation, which can open up so many ways for people to ask questions that or present ideas that maybe they wouldn't have the courage to raise their hand and ask, or those conversations just would never come up, not giving that opportunity, so that collaboration and making it flow in an easy way.
What I think I hear you saying is that it's a tool that allows for collaboration and also can amplify students' voices. Mm-hmm. One of the things that happens in a 45-minute class is that there's only a certain amount of bandwidth as to who can speak at once. And inside of a computing environment, if you have an online discussion, you can have lots of people discussing things at the same time, responding to things, and at the same time have the room still be functional. If you had all those conversations going on at the same time, it just wouldn't work. There would just be so much going on, there'd be so much noise, there'd be so much chaos, that you would actually not have it be able to function. So something like having online discussions is a tremendous way, even though it's kind of eerie when it's silent and you see students intently at their keyboards, there's actually a lot happening. And that's something to consider as well.
I think something that these applications in general do well may sound obvious, Technology allows us to gather, document, collate, organize resources that we want our students to use, information that they share with us. And if you, as an educator, if you use it in an intelligent and informed way, that can be very helpful, not only to you as an educator, but also to the students. These are kids, and they don't necessarily have good study skills, good organizational skills, and used appropriately, you can maximize your time with them, help them maximize their time so that they can focus more on learning and less on
the busy work, finding things. That is certainly
and
true.
in a multimodal way.
Yeah.
The other, rather than on paper and in printed form, in
Sure.
a multimodal manner.
Sure. I know a lot of students who would be, if you just looked at their handwriting, for example, would not be given sophisticated tasks simply because their handwriting wouldn't indicate that they could handle it. It's just too difficult to write and too difficult to get their ideas out. But give them a keyboard, and world is really opened up for them in a way that you wouldn't necessarily expect it to.
And allows us to archive things in a way to share over time and across populations that we didn't really have access to.
Sure. And the possibility of doing journals and actually being able to look at journals at home, or doing portfolios and being able to look at portfolios over the weekend, is possible now with a computer in a way that carrying 35, 60 notebooks back to your house is not going to work. Other ideas of what these applications do? Yeah.
I think to follow on that, not just about storing these lots of different kinds of products and data and information, but making it easily searchable. I think like Evernote, for example, it's been called like an outboard brain. You can store everything in it, which is great, but more than that, you can get what you want much faster. And I think that that's an example of how the technology can help us do something we can't do.
Sure.
Without it.
Yeah. One of the things we have here is called Slate, which it's kind of weird to make a connection between Slate and Evernote. But for me, what both of them do is they leverage the possibility. We actually have one. What it enables me to do is, if I have a difficulty with a student, or a student is having difficulty in my class, I simply write a note on Slate. It goes to all of their teachers and their advisor. And that's the backbone of, it's not even a disciplinary framework, because we really hardly have disciplinary frameworks here. But it creates a trail where, okay, this student's having a bad day. Now the rest of the teachers know that the student's having a bad day. And it happens in real time. And it's something which, if you did it on paper, it physically would not work. The instantaneousness of the communication actually makes it functional, and it also is one of those things where it contains information in real time, and you can go back and use it, and to see, well, it turns out that this kid is having a lot of problems this week. We need to sort that out, and it provides that for everyone, and it's again a sort of radically democratic way of running a school. So instead of saying, okay, all the progress reports or disciplinary notices go to the dean, and the dean, if it's serious enough, goes to the principal or the assistant principal, then essentially what happens is that the teachers together are responsible for the welfare of the kids, not a chain of command. What else do you have? Yeah.
I think even the collection, the way you collected, the way we collaborated, to share all those resources would be impossible without a tool that would allow any collaboration. The next level from that is having a place where that collaboration can be stored with all the other content.
Sure.
So there's a place where not just your website, but your content that you're sharing is looking and giving the student the ability to create content for that same platform where they can go back and see. It'd be great if we had a place where we could have all these,
Yeah.
like all these
Right,
sections.
everything in one place, and that's in part what Slate does.
Yeah.
It is a place that not only has progress reports, it actually has contact information for students so that you can get in touch with their parents right then. It has all sorts of different record-keeping grades, whether students have received interims or warning about their grades mid-semester. All those different things. Yeah.
I think hopefully what we can also do is make technology kind of a more authentic way to mimic the real world. So it's not just like an organizational tool, but it's the actual organizational tools that you will use when you're outside of school. So I love hearing you say something about Asana, which is a project management tool that was built inside Facebook to do their internal project management, and now they spun it out as a separate company, and big organizations are using that. And I think getting students to use those kind of real tools that they'll use as soon as they leave the learning environment gives them a lot more experience that is more authentic.
That's the bigger picture. As educators, I think we have to consider what it is we're educating kids for. We're educating kids to go out into their world, to thrive and to compete in a technology-driven society. So what happens if we're not introducing them to the very tools that we expect them to use and live with in their world?
Right.
As educators, we're not doing our job unless we're exposing them to the very things that they're going to need to exist.
Yeah, and I would even go a step further than that, and I would say that instead of doing work in school that's proxy work, that somehow is a substitute for real life work, we can actually bring the real world into our classrooms to a much greater extent. And even, let's say, for 9th grade, we can create situations where kids use Excel programming and things like that in a limited way. Then we can expand that so by the time they're 12th graders are actually taking their own research that they do and using the programs in the fullest extent that they know how. So what happens is that you just don't have to have your classroom approximate work, or to say this test approximates what students should know about something. You can actually have them do something, have them do an action which affects the world or which they are affected by the world inside the classroom. And the technology can help do that.
Yeah. Just on another note, we were walking around your school yesterday, and the kids were all going back to their central assignment
Right.
their site. And it's interesting, I think in our system, we don't have that. Teachers have their own method of where they put their assignment. I think it's so, what I want to push for is that sort of a central idea, because the kids had no trouble finding out where they were, what they had to do. There's no confusion there.
Yeah.
So from a control, like we talked about the Slate, this I think that what you guys have here is.
Yeah, we have two systems that we depend upon. The system you're describing is Canvas, which is a course management tool, and Slate is essentially a school management tool, if that makes sense. How many people are using something like Canvas or Blackboard or Moodle inside your school building? It makes a huge difference to be able to have students to say, this is where information resides for the class, and you are responsible for that. And you're right, it's a touchstone for the students themselves. There's another hand over here. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I had a question about it, because I appreciated that for the kids, but there's also an idea, maybe because I'm a librarian, that they should be able to find resources that are not just on Google.
Oh, yeah.
They should be able to have access and know the difference of what they're looking at. They shouldn't just be able to go out, and they shouldn't just always have a canned list. I mean, in the elementary schools we do that. That's kind of expected.
Right.
Control, so they're not just out there.
Sure.
But I was a little concerned about that, because I asked some of the kids, and they said, well, they went to the links that their teacher had listed, but then on other times they just went out to Google and found other things to support their arguments.
Yeah, well, I think that you're not going. What you have to be able to work on is the ability for students to be the best judge of what actually is information we have a couple of rules that students know about in terms of information that they're looking at for my history classes, for example. If it has an advertisement, it's not really a source in the way that we want it to be. If it doesn't have an author, it's not a source. We have standards that we want students to internalize and begin to differentiate the information that they're given. The trouble is that they are bombarded with information, and easy answers and the low-hanging fruit is something that they gravitate towards. So it's a constant struggle. It's maybe a constant struggle in college as well. And I think that one of the things that we have to do inside of high school is to be able to help students make the jump to what they're going to be expected to do in college. And by withholding technology or simply not telling them what actually is a good source or what isn't a good source, they're going to be able to just go to college and they're just going to be overwhelmed by what they're expected to do instead of being able to navigate the waters because they've had some ability inside of high school to be able to use technology and be able to use it appropriately.
And to add on that, one of the things that's probably surprising me most is how Kristen Gazilla said that they don't even look at resumes, they look at what they can do and what is their online presence. And really, we have such a unique opportunity of help students thinking about it, but do they want to be put out there? I mean, the conversation yesterday with openness and privacy was really interesting, and I don't think that there's anything that's been right with it. Really get students thinking about what they're doing there, and thinking about, and developing. I mean, they really play a part in building something for the future. And that students get hired for internships just based off of their Twitter and how many followers are following them on Twitter.
Sure. Yep. The woman who was just here, who is also a technical coordinator, every ninth grader here has a class at the beginning of their ninth grade year in which they go through protocols from what their public presence is, what is internal, what's external, and that is part of sort of the introduction, even before they get their computers in ninth grade, of what the kids begin to study and to go through, because it's so critical that once you let people in the garden, and they might eat some fruit from trees that may not be the best for them.
How do you follow up with that? So you open it up and you tell them.
I wish we could say that we follow up with it in a formalized way. I think that what happens is that instead we tend to catch people when they're being inappropriate and when they're posting stuff on Facebook which is not appropriate. They share us in their Facebook stuff. So normally if somebody is saying something, then we had a chance to talk to my coach of the girls soccer team, and there was a dispute after one of our games, and one of our girls started trash talking on Facebook after the game, and obviously that's going to get back to the other team and things like that. So it wasn't, we don't have as much ongoing education, but we are catching people who are misusing the ability of the technology as it goes forward. I think that's something to keep in mind now, is to revisit the issue of people's presence on the net, and to remind them of that with their 10th graders, 11th graders.
Yeah, once we start off in the elementary schools with the proper training in regard to being good digital citizens, that will begin to change. But the bigger problem is educating the educator. We're having a great discussion here right now, and if all of you go back to your schools, you're going to find that 80% of the people that you're talking to have no idea what the hell it is you're saying, because they are not connected educators. They're not people who are discussing the very things that they need to be discussing, and there is a need for digital literacy. That's the new literacy for educators to be literate, and unfortunately, most of them are illiterate. Yeah. So we have to go out and kind of talk it up and get these changes made as people can do it.
Yeah, like going off that, most of our students, and like most of us, and me, but primarily, it's so easy to use the internet as just a tool for consumption. That's what it's for now. It's so much consuming, and if you go to the free library, it's just you walk around and every single person is on YouTube, and it's so easy. There's so much out there. So I'm like trying to question myself and like, try to find the tools that make it easy for production, because if you're just using it to consume, like that's just, I don't know if that's anything at all. So the tools that are probably the best to use are the ones where we can help students produce and then put this out there.
Yeah, the ultimate goal is to get to creation.
Yeah.
That's what we're all doing. So those creative tools where we can get kids understanding enough to get to that, and that's the highest point of the pyramid. We have to get to creation.
Because the easy stuff is not the creation.
Yeah.
And if you provide kids with computers, they're going to play games. And so what do you ask, getting them to move to the next step and to create is really what the good thing.
And what they create is not just for the teacher to
Right.
consume. It's very much for the larger audience, and that is very nature. They're not just trying to write a paper that the teacher would like to read for an audience that perhaps.
Yes.
But kids are very quick to understand that. Right? I mean, we no longer have publishers that we have to go to get books published, because we become self-published. The computer has become a publisher, and kids understand that, and that's a tool that they can use. I hate to use this as an example, but nevertheless, Justin Bieber became a millionaire based on his knowledge of being able to create and put things out on the internet. That's how he got there. And that potential is there for any kid to use. Yeah. That was good. Yeah, that's not.
What's its applications lack? What's missing inside when you take a look at them? What aren't they able to do? And where we talked about what they do well. What's missing?
I think it's what we were talking about. In education, we share all these tools, we spend all this time on how to collaborate, how to collect data, and we never get to the point of getting kids to do something. We spin our wheels forever, whether it's for kids lack it or kids don't know how to organize. And by the time we do that, whether it's curriculum or school bit, it's time to move on. We never actually get to that point of, okay, you've got it, do something. We don't get to that point. They give all the tools that we share, and I'm guilty of it too. It's always about collaboration, sharing, bookmarking, pinning. It's never really that next step. It's like we always just sit there and go, okay, let's organize. When we get the next week a new tool comes in, oh, that's a better way to organize. And we never actually do anything with it. It's like my wife has 10,000 kids in Pinterest, and she hasn't touched 9,997. Like, why do you keep saying? Well, I might use them. Oh, you're not. But it's the same thing in education.
And that's the same conflict we've always had, is the content drives the schedule, and in some cases, the amount of input also makes it impossible to dive into things deeply, unless you're creating some very strict idea that you are going to take however long it takes to do a project, even if it means that you're not going to get to where you need to go, or where the core curriculum says that you need to go, or some other way.
Yeah, I was sort of thinking about that with I think the next part is sort of setting up sort of like meaningful reasons to use these applications. I think sometimes you get caught up in starting with the tool and saying, hey, I can use this for this. But we can sort of like start, especially like with the teachers that we already have that maybe do not feel such confidence in using technology to say, well, what is the goal of this lesson? How can we take that and add on this creative part so that what you're doing can be spread? And how does that work with these different applications? And then just to set that out, and you can interchange what you use when you do it. You do a lot with like, you might use iMovie for one thing, but you might have to step that up to like if we can get Final Cut Pro and then have a more in-depth experience about that. So just creating those curriculum, that curriculum that goes with the technology. And that's the piece that, and I think that we kind of lose when we get all these blog posts about 100 apps for this and 200 apps for that. We don't get down to the curriculum and what that lesson plan looks like.
Could we go in sort of a part where this question?
in addition to constructing meaningful experiences, what the applications lack on their own is that human element. The reason most of us, or all of us, I would assume, became educators. You want to guide, again, these are kids. They don't necessarily know boundaries or have good judgment. So it's, the applications lack that inherent role of guidance and common sense and mindfulness and integrity. They're not built into it. We have to guide those and encourage those and inspire those behaviors. The applications can't do that.
Yeah, Roy, go ahead.
Also, just building off that, depending on your student population, right? There's nothing about conflict resolution or types of modeling for students who might not be getting that at home or in the community. And that's, like you said, you can't replace a teacher, and that's a big part of our role.
Yeah.
I think consistency as well. I feel like for students and for faculty, it's a lower level investment, because why really invest in developing skills in this application or this program in 2 years? And so, well, I don't see that like depth of really getting to know a program of it. Sort of like I want to know it enough, but it's.
Yeah.
My teachers and I were talking about how we really, we give them 4 or 5 different choices for a project, and these are the 3 things we can use for technology, but really, you should be integrating them all along the project rather than just use the skills.
Yeah, I think if you do traditional education, add technology to it, you are not leveraging what the capability is. I'm going to pass out these. I'm not even sure if I have enough of these. I wasn't expecting to do so let me, this is our next exercise. I was going to do something, but the something else, but the numbers overwhelming. I can describe what I was going to do, and that is that I took some New Yorker cartoons and I clicked off the captions. And I was going to give cartoons to some of you and captions to others, and then you would have to actually find out what the captions were, or you were going to meet each other through that that interface. Obviously, I'm not going to do that. There are too many people here to be able to. Hopefully, you'll be able to create small communities of learners inside of your tables. And you may have to share some of these. But what I'd like you to do is, this is a page, some pages of quotes. And there are 5 quotes here. And what I'd like you to do inside your table is simply to have a discussion based upon these quotes. And I selected these last year for a slightly different presentation. Quote 1, the world is not comprehensible, but it is embraceable through the embracing of one of its beings. Quote 2, the job of an educator is to teach students to see the vitality in themselves. Quote 3, educating the mind without educating the heart is no education at all. 4, play is the highest form of research. And this might be my favorite. The whole purpose of education is to turn mirrors into windows. So what I'd like you to do is to form your tables or groups. And if you're on the periphery, try to pull up towards the table or towards form a group. And what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to simply discuss these quotes inside of your small learning community, if you can. Okay? And introduce yourselves as well, so that you know who each other are. This is over.
Were you
You can use these for suggestions, you don't have to use all
Is this gonna mess it up if I don't? It shouldn't. I swear it was 100% this morning. I don't know what happened. Because it's starting to hurt.
Think about 5 minutes. 5 minutes to wrap up. Two minutes. All right, we gather back together, please. All right, thank you. Going back. Focus here, please. All right. So I did sort of a informal sort of poll, and this quote seemed to have gotten a lot of attention. And I was wondering, what's so wrong about play? What do people think? Why did this quote gather so much of people's attention, and why did it generate so much discussion? Go ahead.
I was just sharing, Aaron over there. He's the instructional coach there. Kind of under his guide, supervision, myself and the teachers. That is our professional development, is exploring play as a form of learning research for those students. And so I thought that should be the quote on
Yeah. Wonderful. Yeah.
I think play gets a bad rap because we on the inside know that play is about the process, and process is where learning happens, experimentation. On the outside, it doesn't look like anything because there is not necessarily a good product. So
That can't be measured and can't be.
it can't be measured, it can't be listed, it can't be quantified, and on the outside, it doesn't look like it's a very valuable use of resources over time. But on the inside, we know that that's where the process is really what it's about. That's where kids are learning.
Yes, but education is always separated play learning.
Right. You have recess.
Yeah, that's where play takes place.
Right.
And if it takes place anywhere else, we look down on it. Like things that and kindergarten. You know, they don't have that same feel to them as the real learning going on in the classroom.
Right, but actually when you get to graduate school, it looks a lot more like kindergarten at the best graduate schools than it does high school, which is kind of weird. It's at both ends of the spectrum, but not in the middle sometimes.
It also has sort of like this production and consumption teaching situation. We talk about, are you just playing some other product, like you just go to miniflip.com and just playing on there, or are you creating your games? I know were young, we would have like, we get a stick and we create some sort of thing that you would work with your friends to kind of create. But now it's just like so many products and things out there where you're just consuming what they give. You're not really, or hacking or creating the new landscape of what that looks like. And I think productive play, we talk about sort of like creating that, those rules and guidelines for how we play. There's definitely way more, I definitely see more potential in that. And sort of like this consumptive play where you're just going into this game and playing that.
Right. But I've seen a lot of kids here get into games, and all of a sudden they want to learn how to work Flash and how to begin to develop their own. At some point, it gets a little bit boring for them, and they actually want to develop their own stuff. They actually want to try. They want to try to do that.
One of the things that we brought up, at first I said I didn't agree with this quote, and then the change happened pretty quickly. Because it was easy to convince, I suppose. But in my 5th year teaching, and I think the more I do it, the more I'm beginning to realize that I can let go a little bit and allow the kids to sort of create and do that. Right below, it's like, there it is, it's top level, right? Let them take a discussion and do whatever they want with it. And I always kid around when they're having a good time doing it, and they tell me it's because sometimes learning can be fun. And I'm like, well, that's so weird. My whole life I never heard that.
You're going to go from a teacher to an educator.
And there you go, and that's the point, right? It's like finding a game and making it up, like we used to do when we were little. We didn't have all these things that were fed to us.
If they're making it up as they go along, they own it. They take ownership of their own learning.
And they buy in, and it's easier.
I mean, we talk about lifelong learning is what we really want to create in students. The problem is we haven't created it in ourselves. Very few teachers are lifelong learners because they get their degree, they get their license, they get their job, and they figure, okay, this is it, I'm done. Because they've reached exactly what they plan to do, and they stop learning. We have to continually learn, which is great for educators to be connected using that very same technology, and have the very same discussions that we're having here are taking place online, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, globally. So it's a big plus.
I think the work-play dichotomy is, I don't know, sort of a red herring. The important one is the production-consumption one, right? Like, we already know this. Like, if a kid's sitting there watching TV for hours, we'll say, stop watching TV, go play. Because playing is actually active and will result in, a painting or like a game or something like that. I just think this division between work and play is like a social construct that we should move past, because like if you talk to people who work in creative fields, kind where we're trying to create jobs and that we love for kids to go into, I go play for 8 hours a day and I get paid for it.
That's it. And it would be wonderful if all teachers could say the same thing.
Yeah.
That they played for 8 hours a day and they got paid for it to do it. I feel like I do that sometimes here. On good days, on bad days it may not necessarily seem that way, but there are enough good days where that's what I feel like I'm doing.
I was just going to say that I think play has a real evolutionary nature to it. Like, as adults, I'm not sure we can always identify what kids didn't play necessarily. Like, sometimes you go, what are you doing there? And they're like, how's that fun? I don't even get it, right? And they love it. So it's just something that's always changing.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Like, your comment was great. I think about parenting in this instance that we say we send a person for 4 hours. Hey, you need to go and play, but yet whenever your kid comes home and say, ask them, so what was your favorite thing about school today? Recess. No. What's your favorite class? It's like we don't take that as like a legitimate answer. Like why was recess your favorite time of the day? And yeah, like when my kids come home and I talk to them about what they learned at recess and lunch, and my God, they're creating all kinds of freaking awesome universes with rules of physics don't apply and things like that, and it's amazing, And so, but what I'm saying? Like, it's like this thing that we do part of with parents as parents, and we put some emphasis on that classroom and we need to emphasize play sometimes as parents by wanting to know what's your favorite class. We don't take lunch and recess as a legitimate answer to that question.
Shouldn't learning be work at some point, though? is it, we do have to have some, kids have some grit to them. That they have to be able to withstand doing something that they may not necessarily always like. And where does that fit in?
I think learning should be a struggle sometimes, not necessarily work. I mean, overcoming the dragon of Dracona is a difficult thing to do. It's a struggle, and you learn a lot from it. But I want to say that my son overcoming that dragon would be considered work for him.
Okay. Yeah.
I think it's interesting that the first part of that statement, and not the latter half, right? So play the academic research. Research is a structured concept. Right? So there's no phrase that it's a decent kind of thing. Right? There's a complete kind of systematic process for how you research. And so if you're playing within the structure of research, that probably leads to a dynamic outcome. But so I think part of it should be work. What this quote made me think of was Ian Wilson, the biologist. So he talks a lot about how the reason is to study behavior in ants and being a biologist is because he played as a kid in whatever. But he was not good at the research. A lot of those introduced to him. So I think the research part is to be the key part of this. So, and playing in that structure could be really interesting.
I think that you brought up something interesting when you talked about extremal, and there was an initial different philosophy of education, but I really don't think so, because there is something to hard work. You do have to be able to sit down and just knock out something. But I've seen the quote lazy students at the school work till 2 a.m. slaving over creating this video that was going to be presented to a student. He was more motivated. He would come and tell me these dramatic stories, but he loved it. For him, that was his play. And I find that when I'm creating something, and that right now I'm creating my first online learning course for teachers in our district, and that would be made public. And I'm looking really hard on it, but for me, it is actually my play. Like, I'm doing this research because I really want to create something that's great, but I consider that my playtime. And I think that when you hit that sort of magical spot of finding what the student's interested, they will go out and work really hard and do that research and do the things that are necessary to figure these things out. And I think the reason why he did that and would stay up so late and work so hard when he went in other subjects was because that for him was play. He had found that sort of magical thing that, was for him to create that grit and that tenacity and perseverance to do that, but he was also
I think that also sort of like sort of points in the direction of like how you get to the going through the learning things that don't really interest you part and like sort of like persevering through that is that once you find that thing that is so absorbing that you want to like pursue it like as far as you can, there are going to end up being prerequisites you haven't gotten to yet. And if it's that important to you, you're going to go back and backfill that, right? Like, I mean, I didn't really enjoy math in high school, but ended up going in a computer science direction. So I needed to backfill some calculus, linear algebra, stuff like that. And once I had like something that I loved, that was a reason for going back and learning that, I enjoyed learning that because there was an application. But when it was just completely to me purposeless, then like, I wanted nothing to do with it.
So one of the things we can challenge ourselves on Monday is to provide context as to what kids are going to be learning. Another challenge is what would it look like to have kids play in the classroom on Monday? What would it what would that entail? And what would that mean? What would it mean for you to play in the classroom on Monday? What would that look like?
I think that's a good question because play is, I think, maybe misunderstood or it's very wide. Sure. And I know when I work with smaller kids, what the teachers are looking for is how play evolves. Are they playing in parallel? Can they take a game, start it one day and continue it the next? How does maturity play into play? And how can, as a teacher, I can guide that by asking questions, giving context, elaborating? Can they use objects? Can they expand the game? Can they cooperate, or and all that sort of thing? So I think by asking what does play look like when you're doing research, I think it might sort of define it. And how can I get people to play in that context? And how can I give them feedback to make them involved?
I think just as we have to sort of redefine how we view play as something valuable, we have to also teach that to our students. I know that, like you said, going on Monday, if I said the word play or even gave them something that was playful, they value it less than if I gave them a test or a quiz or a writing assignment with a grade. So I think part of that is giving them the context of why we're doing this and really trying to get for them to understand how play is important. Because if I did that, they would have a blast, they'd probably learn some things, maybe some would get invested. I think ultimately they wouldn't value it like I would if I gave them a rigor.
And so some of us teach in high schools where rigor is what the parents expect, it's what students expect, and it's the path that they want to follow at the time. And sometimes play can be rigorous as well, but it may not have outward appearances.
I was happening that I'm going with it now. The issue that the context thing, when you brought it up, I don't know, finding a purpose in what you're learning, I feel like there's issues with when we talk about stuff from a lesson like this is important. The kid's like, no, it's not. I don't care about this. And finding the reason in them, in themselves, to mirror the windows for where how can I make this important to them? Or that's what I feel like we all probably struggle with so much is my students don't care. I'm teaching U.S. history, it's ancient, and I'm teaching inner city school, I'm teaching about a bunch of old stuffy white kids. And that's how the students look at it. And I'm like, well, how does federalism apply to you? How does this apply to you? And that seems like it's such a struggle that we have a hard time with them. And to get them to play on it, to get them to find a way to make it internal, is probably the biggest struggle that I'm looking closer to practice and for the translate.
It's great. You have something to say.
Just on a different angle, I'm a professional development specialist, so I teach teachers about technology. So this concept of play, for me, for the teachers who get technology, like mentioned before, the teachers who don't get technology, it's you say play, you see this fear come over your face. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah, like I'm gonna get lost and I'm gonna break this thing. Like this concept of play, you kind of have to relate it to when they were kids and they used to go outside and play and make mistakes and it was okay. You know what I mean? So getting the teachers to actually sit down and understand this kind of idea of play is way harder than dealing with students because I taught 7th and 8th grade computer class. I tell them to go play and they're like, I don't care if I make mistakes. You know what I mean? I'm not going to break it. I'm going to be able to fix it. So it's just trying to get teachers to understand the value within themselves, like the value of putting that time into play to learn these things, and understanding that students aren't this idea of digital natives. You know, they just spend more time playing than they do. You know, so that's the kind of angle that I'm looking at it. How do I get teachers to value that?
I'd follow up on that with, as you move from lower to middle to high school, we're getting how you measure success or how you measure their learning changes. In ways you're still playing the game of getting into college, you're adhering to curriculum that require to make successful students in the test to get into college. So at my school, the after school teachers are really reluctant to. They also can say, I've been doing it this way for a lot of years, and it's always working. That's students are always prepared for college, so why would I should be learning if it's working? And it's really just a question of how you're measuring would it work better if we should work better.
Yeah. And also, what are you working towards?
What are you working towards? What is your goal?
What's your goal? My goal is relatively simple. I want kids to be kind, considerate, wise, thoughtful, and I don't know what the technology is going to be in 20 years, and I do know that I want them to do that. that might be our final thought because we're out of time. Thank you so much for contributing to the list that we generated earlier, and thank you so much for coming to Philadelphia and participating in the conversation. Thank you.